Have you ever looked around at your life, your beautiful life with your job, your partner, your kids, the home you built, and thought, is this it? You did everything you were supposed to do. You built a career, you raised a family, you managed all the moving pieces. And yet, in those rare quiet moments, a question creeps in. Am I really living up to my full potential? Is this what I'm meant to be doing? And then comes the guilt because you have so much. A stable job, a family, a life that looks the way it should. So why does it feel like something is missing? If you ever felt this way, you're not alone. I'm certainly there with you. And I felt so much guilt about that. I felt like I should be grateful for everything that I have. Why do I always seem to want more? And now I try to see it in a different way. I try to see it as like a good motor, and that it's okay that my purpose also seems to be changing. And this is what this episode is about. Welcome back to the Doula Johanna podcast. I wanted to start this episode with another personal story. A couple months ago, before I even started this podcast, I was invited to a birthday dinner of a really dear friend of mine. I've known her forever, but I didn't know most of the other women that came to that party. And I have to say, it was a special experience for me, because the women at that party, I perceived them as like gorgeous, effortlessly cool, funny, adventurous, and all the stories they were telling were wild. It was all about like their drinking adventures, like adventures with men, like all those things that they did in their 20s. And I was laughing along with them. Their stories were outrageous. But at the same time, I felt a little uncomfortable or insecure inside of myself. I had this feeling of, wow, I'm not really like them. My late 20s were actually boring, like miserable. I spent them buried in a PhD thesis that really wasn't for me in a lot of ways. And then it got even more uncomfortable because the conversation shifted to motherhood, a topic where I thought like, well, I should be confident. Like, I have 3 kids. I'm a doula. Like, I think this is my topic, my area. But then that happened. Everybody around that table shared how they never planned on being a mom, that it was never a real priority for them, but that they are so surprised how much they enjoy it now. And I sat there stunned, honestly. I couldn't believe it that my experience was the complete opposite of that. I had always wanted to become a mom. I really wanted to have babies, like 6 or 7 of them in all colors, like the United Colors of Benetton ads that were out there in the 80s and 90s. So when I got pregnant with my first baby, I was ecstatic. I was convinced that motherhood would be blissful. But from the very first minute, basically, I struggled deeply. The early years of motherhood were brutal in ways that I never expected. Now, 3 kids in, I'm a much happier mom, but it took years for me to get here. So that dinner really left me thinking about expectations, identity, and purpose. What happens when the things we thought would fulfill us don't turn out the way we imagined? Growing up, I think the only purpose I could imagine was building something that I didn't have as a kid. I wanted to have a loving home. Parents who love each other, several siblings who all have the same name and who eat dinner together. I thought like if I could achieve that dream, that would be everything for me. And I can say with a lot of gratitude that I got there. Like I am in a very committed partnership. It's not always easy, but we're really working hard on it, both of us. We have 3 healthy kids, which is also a huge blessing. So we get to enjoy a lot of those things. And I thought that should be everything for me. But then I realized that even though motherhood is so meaningful, it's also deeply challenging for me. It cracked me open in ways I never imagined, but it doesn't erase all the other parts of me. And even though I was told so many times that it should be enough, I still felt unfulfilled in a lot of ways. And I guess the real issue with purpose is that we attach it to one single role, to just motherhood or marriage or a career. But I really realized that purpose isn't this one thing, and it's not fixed. It's always evolving, and it can evolve with us. And I guess a lot of our purposes we can only figure out while walking the walk. It's really impossible to know when you're 20 or 30 all the things that will light you up later in life. For a long time, I didn't let myself even think about wanting more. I was too busy just trying to survive. The early years of motherhood were brutal for me. I had imagined that becoming a mom would feel like stepping into my true purpose, that it would be deeply fulfilling and even healing, but instead I felt overwhelmed and exhausted and completely lost more days than not. I wasn't in a place where I could dream bigger, because first I needed to reach a place of emotional safety. I needed to find my footing to make it through the days without feeling like I was drowning. And I think that's true for so many of us. For years, I held on to this idea that I should be fulfilled, that I should be happy with what I had, that even questioning if I wanted more was selfish or ungrateful. But here's what I've learned. That feeling isn't a flaw. It's a calling, and that's a gift. It's not wrong to want more. It doesn't mean you don't love your children or appreciate your life. It just means you're human. It means you are growing. This idea that if you haven't figured it all out by a certain age, because then it's too late to change or too late to grow, this is simply not true. It's never too late. In fact, I think the opposite is true. Our purpose is supposed to evolve. We are meant to change. And if we ignore that calling, if we try to silence it because we feel guilty or afraid, then we're not actually honoring the full version of ourselves. For me, realizing this changed everything. I don't want to strive for a life of comfort. I want to keep stepping outside of my comfort zone. I want to keep learning. I want to keep growing and being okay with not always having the answers. And that's the shift I want to invite you to consider today. What if the desire for more isn't a problem? What if it's the beginning of something new? Looking back at my PhD years, it was hard to imagine how anything positive could have come out of those dark, miserable days. I was buried in endless research, struggling with feelings of isolation, stress, being a failure. It felt like my entire late 20s had been lost to a thesis I couldn't get excited about, and a life that seemed to pass me by while I was sitting in front of a computer screen. The frustration and exhaustion were overwhelming at times, and I often questioned if it had been all worth it. But what I couldn't see then was how much I was actually learning. Despite the misery, my PhD taught me invaluable skills that I still use today. The analytical thinking, the ability to break down complex problems, and the patience required to push through difficult tasks. These are all things I rely on now, especially in my work as a doula, but also as a mom and in my journey towards building my business. Also, I formed some amazing friendships during those years, and I will be forever grateful for those. And then there were the struggles I had with motherhood. Like the first years with my children that felt like a constant battle for survival. And yet, those hard years have made me the mother I am today. They shaped my approach to supporting other mothers, helping me develop empathy, patience, and understanding I bring into my work as a doula. I know what it's like to feel overwhelmed, to doubt yourself, to feel like you're failing. Because of my struggles, I am able to meet the mothers I work with where they are, without judgment, without rushing to fix everything. Instead, I can offer a listening ear, a compassionate heart, and an understanding that we are all doing our best with the tools we have. It's easy to fall into the trap of believing that our struggles, whether in our careers or our personal lives, are wasted time or failures. But I've come to realize that nothing is wasted. Every struggle, every hardship has prepared me for something greater. It might not feel like it in the moment, but every experience teaches us something that shapes our purpose. If you want to hear an amazing story about that, listen to last week's episode, the story that Lee Watson told us about her faith journey. This is an amazing example for that. So the most surprising thing for me was that sometimes it's just things that we least expect. the painful, difficult, and even the seemingly wasted parts of our lives that ultimately become the foundation for our growth, our calling, and the impact we make on others. For me, there are moments that truly make me feel alive. Moments that remind me why I'm doing all of this, even when the roads get tough. One of those moments came when I was recording my podcast for the first time. I had been dreaming of starting it for years, but for one reason or another, I kept putting it off. Then one day, I finally sat down to record. The process felt so freeing, so authentic as I shared my thoughts and experiences with the mic, imagining the people who might one day listen. And then there was this day where I had a goal-setting workshop with the aspiring photographers, sitting there with a group of women dreaming about their futures. That made me feel alive. That felt like purpose. I really thought like, okay, this is what I want to be doing. It wasn't about striving for perfection or impressing anyone. It was about showing up as I am, embracing where I am in my journey, and having fun with the process. It's so easy to get caught up in the idea of big success, especially in a world so focused on social media metrics. How many followers do you have? How many likes? How many people are listening? But I've learned that real success, the feeling of real success, doesn't always have to be measured in numbers. For me, it's about doing what I love and staying true to my purpose without the weight of external expectations. At the time of recording this episode, I have 17 YouTube subscribers. 17. That number might seem laughably small to most people, but to me, it's precious. Each of those 17 people is someone who has chosen to hear my voice every week. That's 17 souls who resonate with what I have to say. And when I think about it, that's enough to fill my living room. To me, that feels like a powerful connection, not something that should be diminished by comparing myself to the vast sea of successful influencers and viral content creators out there. I've come to realize that these moments, the ones that make me feel alive, they are the ones that truly matter. And they make everything else I achieved in my life feel so much better. When I get to do things that I love more on my children. I am more grateful for my marriage. I am more grateful for my day job. But it's because I'm making room for the things that light my heart up. It's not about chasing the fleeting highs of viral success or trying to meet someone else's expectations. It's about finding fulfillment in doing the work, regardless of whether it's deemed successful by social media standards. When we do what we love, without the pressure of external validation, we begin to create our own definition of success, one that is rooted in authenticity, joy, and meaning. For me, recording my podcast is really about sharing my truth, connecting with others who are on a similar journey, and offering value in whatever way I can. And if that means having 17 subscribers or 17,000, it doesn't really matter, because those 17 are enough. And that in itself feels so incredibly precious. My final message with this episode is, start now, no matter where you are. I couldn't have known at 28 that I was meant to be a doula. At that age, I was focused on surviving my PhD and doing what I thought I should be doing. Becoming a doula wasn't even on my radar. But looking back now, every step I took, every challenge I faced, every detour I went down has led me right here to this moment. I also couldn't have made this podcast for mothers in their 40s before being one. The perspective I bring today is so different from what I could have offered in my 20s or even in my early 30s. Now I can speak to the experiences of women in their 30s and 40s because I've lived it. I've felt the struggles, the forgotten dreams, the pull of reinvention. Only through time and through all the lessons I've learned along the way can I offer the things I'm able to share with you now. And here's the thing, I'm not behind. And neither are you. No matter where you are in life, no matter how much time you think you've lost or how many roads you haven't taken, you're exactly where you need to be. Life doesn't work on some fixed timeline, and you're not in competition with anyone else. Every step I've taken, every turn and every struggle has been a part of the journey that led me here to this awesome moment. If I could offer one piece of advice to anyone feeling stuck, it would be this: start now. No matter how old you are, no matter what your dreams look like or how far behind you feel, just start. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to take one small step towards those forgotten dreams. And I mean a real step. Not the perfect, polished step that feels safe or comfortable, but the messy, imperfect baby step that's just for you, even if it's a little scary. Purpose just isn't the singular destination. It's not a neatly packaged mission that you think you can tick off when it's done. Purpose is how we engage with life. It's about staying connected to what makes us feel alive, challenged, and in motion. It's not always about what we achieve. It's about how we show up and how we lean into our own growth. In the last few months, I've learned so much about how we've evolved as humans. For most of history, survival was the main goal. It took real effort to secure food and find shelter and build relationships. And getting a dopamine rush back then wasn't easy. Our reward system weren't constantly activated by things like sugar and endless distractions and porn and whatnot. Now, in this world of instant gratifications, our brains can feel confused. We create struggles in our minds because the basics are no longer our primary focus. I guess that purpose is maybe really about choosing meaning in the everyday. It's in the following what excites you, even when it feels new, unfamiliar, or a little intimidating. It's about being willing to try, fail, and learn. For me, my purpose is found in staying present, in living up to my potential, and in stepping outside of my comfort zone, no matter how uncomfortable that might be. And that's why I want to encourage you to take that first step, even if it feels small. When you show up for yourself, when you take those imperfect steps, you'll start to see that nothing was wasted. All the struggles, the doubts, the detours, they're all part of your story. And it's a story that is still unfolding, one small step at a time. I hope you could take something away from this episode, and thank you so much for tuning in. See you all next week. Take care and be your own life doula.